Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about the most recent fight that ended up occurring. Yet again, another victim that is fell to that of the great fighter, and probably top three, top two. Some would even debate the number one pound for pound fighter in all the boxing today. Mr. Naoya, the monster Inoue. Of course, he was able to defend his unification belts, his complete four belt defense at the 122-pound weight class over a relatively game, I believe, Southern Korean opponent by the name of Kim. But Kim within this fight, he started southpaw. I think that he's a southpaw regularly. He was somewhat technical and, he was kind of trying to feel out Inoue in the beginning. And Inoue, as you could tell, was a little bit tentative. But of course, that's to be a little bit normal because originally he was not supposed to fight this guy. He was supposed to fight the Australian fighter known as Sam Goodman. But of course, he ended up having to pull out because of multiple eye cuts and eye injuries. So unfortunately, that fight did not come to fruition. But of course, for those of you that did not end up hearing about the results, Naoya Inoue, of course, eventually was able to get the knockout within that of the fourth round, which of course pretty much did not surprise anybody, including myself. But the real question is about Mr. Naoya Inoue is that what really is in it for him from here? Because Inoue has pretty much dominated his level of competition all the way from the lower weight classes. When he was at the weight divisions, I believe at 115 and a little bit lower. And now, of course, at 122, a couple of weight classes later, he is still dominating the competition. And of course, he has pretty much knocked everybody out within those weight classes. I think that he's gotten a knockout or a stoppage within his past, 10 to 11 fights. But, the question is about Mr. Naoya Inoue is he going to get in a big fight potentially against a Junto Nakatani sometime this year or in the spring of 2025, and also possibly against Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. Now, I don't personally believe that the Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez fight is going to happen because I think that if you're boxing, I think that more than likely that the people behind the scenes that they would probably want to get a little bit more behind someone like a Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez than what they would really want a Naoya Inoue. Someone that, of course, is a Mexican or Mexican American fighter in Bam Bam Rodriguez. I think that Bam Bam Rodriguez actually is from Mexico. But I think that Bam Bam Rodriguez, he's also an exceptional talent, and I would love to see that fight. But eventually, they got to get up to the same weight class. But the question is about Mr. Inoue Inoue is what really is next for him? Because there's not really much else left at the 122-pound weight class. Now, a certain amount of people, of course, are talking about that MJ dude, that one Uzbekistani fighter that lost to Marlon Tapales a couple of fights ago. And I mean, he's a very gifted boxer. He's a relatively talented boxer. But in my view, he kind of lost his opportunity when he lost to Marlon Tapales. It is what it is. But, talking about Mr. Inoue in a way within this fight, I did want to bring up certain things because it's going to be very particularly interesting to see how Inoue does against a fighter that not only can actually compete with his level of skills, but also his level of athleticism. Out of any other fighter that I've personally seen within my lifetime fight, and I pretty much grew up throughout the 2010s of watching boxing and now within the 2020s, all the great fighters that I ended up watching within my lifetime, the one fighter that probably reminds me the most of Roy Jones Jr. is that of Inoue Inoue. This dude is so athletically gifted, and then on top of that, he's an exceptional fighter within almost whatever range. However, what I will state is this: there are certain mistakes that Naoya Inoue does make that at certain times maybe a certain boxer may be able to take advantage of if he's not careful. And Timothy Bradley, even though there are certain times to where I don't agree with his commentary, or I think that he goes a little bit too far with some of the things that he states on his channel or whatever it may be, there are certain times also where I very much agree with his commentary. And one thing that Timothy Bradley stated about Inoue is that sometimes he can get a little bit over anxious or a little bit too greedy or a little bit overconfident. And that's a part of the reason why Inoue at times he'll be a little bit more hittable, or sometimes he'll get hit with certain shots when he probably shouldn't. And I think that Inoue more than likely can tighten up on that, but he's going to have to be very careful because I'm going to do a video not too long ago or not too long from now where I review a couple of Inoue's fight highlights, and we're going to review certain strengths and weaknesses that he may have within the style. And Inoue doesn't really have much weaknesses. He's an all-time great level talent. Like he's not just someone that's all power and speed. He's a dude that can fight within any range. He has really increased his head movement to a great degree. He's a guy that has a great lead hand and an excellent jab. He can fight excellent on the back foot. He can fight excellent within the mid range. He also can fight very well within the up close range. Naoya Inoue is one of those guys that is just exceptionally talented. But I don't know if he's ever actually been in the ring with someone that has actually ever dared to be great against him. And I don't hold Inoue against that standard, but or I don't hold that against Inoue. But when you take a look at this guy, for example, Kim, even though I think that he thought going into the fight that, I'm going to shock the world and, in a way there are certain things that I can take advantage of. These people go into the fight not actually truly believing that they can win the fight, or at least that they should be able to win the fight. Because if Kim really thought that he could win the fight against Inoue, he would have been throwing a little bit more in the second round. He would have been trying to set him up a little bit more with the jab. He would have been throwing a little bit more. And of course, it's easier said than done against such an exceptional level fighter and such a powerful and quick fighter like that of a Naoya Inoue. But most of these guys, they say before the fight, they talk all this trash about how they're going to do this against Inoue and that Inoue is overrated. And this is what I see with every all-time great level boxer. I've seen it with Crawford. I've seen it with Canelo Alvarez. I've seen it with certain guys where they say that, like for those of you that remember Caleb playing against Canelo, he said that, Canelo Alvarez, I'm going to take advantage of this. And then he gets in the ring. Caleb Plant figures out what it's really like. And then in the middle of the fight, he says, "Oh, I'm a pretty good fighter, huh?" Which was basically his concession of saying that, Canelo Alvarez, I know that eventually you're going to stop me. And Kim, certain people were saying, why was Kim saying, keep coming at me? The reason why he was saying that is because Kim knew that he was getting his ass whooped. That's the reason why he was saying that. He was getting hit with very hard shots, and he was trying to, overall, once again, deter Inoue and try to make him feel that you're not hurting me. But that shit never works, because when you talk about Inoue, he that dude is a hired killer. That dude overall, once again, he knows overall when he has his guy hurt. He knows overall when the guy truly believes that they can beat him and where they when they cannot. So like I said, that guy, when it comes down to when he did that shit, all he was telling Inoue is that you hurt me really bad with that last punch. That's all he was saying. But some of the things that Timothy Bradley was saying in the commentary, I actually thought were very good parts of the commentary, because I believe that Timothy Bradley is correct about certain things about Inoue. Inoue is an exceptional level boxer, and he has so many talents and so many gifts, and he's really great in every range. There's not many weaknesses that Inoue has. But his one weakness seems to be possibly what could be a little bit later on if he's not careful, a little bit of an Achilles heel. We've seen it a little bit against Louis Neri. Sometimes, in a way, he gets a little bit too greedy. He gets a little bit too bloodthirsty. And at times that can once again cause him to get hit in certain ranges that he shouldn't be hit in. He needs to tighten up his defense sometimes. And one thing that you notice about Inoue is that sometimes when he throws a hook, especially that right hand, sometimes he'll kind of leave his head within the range to where he can be hit. Or on top of that, when he's throwing a hook, the other hand is not protecting his face and keeping his hand up near his face while he's throwing that lead hook to overall his opponent. He's got to be very careful, because Kim actually did end up catching him with one good left hand while Inoue was throwing that right hand, and he actually beat Inoue to the punch and caught him with a good left straight to the face. And even Timothy Bradley stated it, and he said the same thing that I noticed that a lot of opponents don't do against Inoue, which is that they actually try to punch either right before Inoue's about to punch or right as soon as he punches. Meaning what? That you have to dare to be great against Inoue if you want to beat someone like him. You have to punch within a multitude of ranges. Just like when I reviewed the fight the other day with Madrimov and Crawford. Madrimov really didn't dare to be great against Terrence Bud Crawford. He didn't really believe that he could beat Crawford, because if he believed that he could beat Crawford, he would have been throwing sometimes either right before Crawford was about to throw, or sometimes right when Crawford is about to throw. And sometimes when Inoue throws that lead hook, it's extremely quick, and there's a right time to do that and a not right time to do that. Inoue sometimes will lead with a hook, which is a lot of the times what you're not supposed to do. Now, he sets it up a lot of the times very well with the lead hand and good feints to the body, and he sets it up usually very well. But there are some times where he'll wing it from left field, and because he's so exceptionally quick, he can get away with it. Like Roy Jones would do that shit all the time, where he could get away with that all the time because he was so quick and so powerful that fighters, no matter how good they were, they just couldn't do shit against it, because it's like, what the hell are you going to do against that guy? So that's why I say Inoue reminds me so much of Roy Jones Jr. in that sense, to where he's got to be a little bit careful, because one of these days he's going to get countered by a certain guy, especially that does have decent power and a guy that has decent technique and actually is going to try to give Inoue a fight. And if he does not sharpen up his defense, if he does not keep his hands up when he needs to, or if he gets a little bit too greedy or overconfident or overzealous or over anxious, he's going to get knocked down and it might potentially cost him a fight one of these days. So he's going to have to be very, very careful with that. But Inoue, whenever I've seen him really need to tune up the performance and sharpen up, he does. But, once again, just make sure that you don't get too overconfident. But Inoue is a guy, and you see this with certain fighters. Inoue, a part of the reason, once again, why, and I always say this, whenever you take a look at certain fighters or certain athletes or people, the way that they paint a painting or the way that they may direct a movie or, how they perform certain things in the art form that they have, it's because of a certain philosophy that they have in life. Inoue is the type of guy to where you take a look at him, a part of the reason why he gets so overzealous and a part of the reason why he really goes for the kill. Inoue is just a guy to where you can take a look at him, and if you really know the psychology of certain fighters, he just loves whooping boys' ass. like Inoue just is one of those fighters that just really gets a kick off of just completely humiliating or completely whooping the shit out of certain opponents. And there's just certain fighters that are like that. Like Roberto Duran, I believe, at one point in time, he had a quote saying that in order to be an all-time great level boxer or a great boxer, you have to have a certain amount of vileness within you. You have to have a certain amount of callousness within you, almost like an evilness within you that really loves to hurt and punish your opponent. And a lot of fighters like doing that. Like when you take a look at Gennady Golovkin, even though Gennady Golovkin looks like a nice guy on the surface, the way that he talks and he seems like a nice guy in real life and in interviews, Golovkin really likes hurting his opponents. You can tell overall the way that he reacts and overall the way that he talks. He grew up in a very, poor and crime-ridden city in Kazakhstan when he was a child. And he is a guy overall, to where he was in a lot of street fights. And he's a dude that just loves putting it on people. It is what it is. Inoue is very similar. Inoue is of that same ilk of a Roberto Duran. He's a technical killer. That's what Inoue is. He's a samurai. This dude, once again, is a cold-blooded technical killer. And what makes him so dangerous is not just his athleticism, but he's pretty much technically sound in almost every category. It's just he's got to be a little bit more defensively responsible. And this is why I also say, like, when you take a look at numbers, you can't always completely rely on numbers. Because I was having a conversation with someone the other day when we were talking about the defensive prowess of both Crawford and Canelo. And this guy was saying, well, you want to say that Canelo was greater defensively than Crawford in your view, but by the numbers, Crawford is apparently better defensively than Canelo. So you're just feeding into your own delusion because you're a fanboy of Canelo. And I said, well, if we're going to go off of that narrative, then according to your information, if we're going to go off of numbers, then Inoue should be looked at as the best fighter in the world. Because according to the numbers, a lot of the times he's defensively more sound and offensively, landing at a higher accuracy percentage, especially with his power punches, than possibly even Terence Crawford or Canelo Alvarez. So what that means is that Inoue should be immediately declared as the best fighter, and better defensively and better offensively than Terence Bud Crawford. But the thing is that when you take a look at a certain amount of these Terence Bud Crawford fans, what they love to do is that they love to take a look at Terence Bud Crawford's resume and say, oh, Crawford has, all these names like Ricky Burns and all these, right, but those guys are not A-grade level fighters. Like I said, Crawford has 5 A-grade level names in his resume. He has Spence, he has Madrimov, he has Porter, he has Postone, he has Gamboa. That's it. None of the other wins are A-grade level wins. And everyone knows it. It is what it is. They take a look at Inoue and they try to say overall that Inoue that he's fighting a lot of these bums. Well, according to you guys, Terence Bud Crawford fought a whole lot of champions like Julius Ndongo and Ricky Burns. Right, so then why are we not counting the champions then if we're just going off of champions and not counting any level of context of skills or what level they are? We need to start counting Inoue's champions because he has more champions on his record than Terence Bud Crawford. He has guys like Jamie McDonald. He has, Payano. He has certain guys like that on his record. So if we're just going to count champions and, once again, not talk about the level that they were on, then, once again, Inoue debatably needs to be the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter. But you notice that a certain amount of these guys are not going to go that far. So they know the difference in level of competition, but, they only love to use that excuse, or use that narrative when it fits them. But, the thing of what I'll say about Inoue is this. In my view, he has about 3 A-grade level wins, maybe 4 in his career. I definitely give him Fulton. I also give him Nonito Donaire because he had never lost at that weight class. And yes, Donaire was nearing 40 years old, but He also defeated, I believe, one or two undefeated champions there, undefeated contenders. And Donaire also was a champion, and he had never lost at that weight class, so he had a certain amount of confidence there. So I'll at least give Inoue the A- win there. And I also give Marlon Tapales. And I know that a certain amount of people may say, well, Marlon Tapales, why would you give him Marlon Tapales? Keep in mind that Tapales actually, he can box. He's not a guy that is, just some stiff ass boxer. He's a guy that can change levels. He has a good over the top jab. He has a good left hand. He's actually somewhat sound defensively. And that's why he gave Inoue some tough rounds within that fight. And on top of that, he beat the very talented MJ, the Alek Manayev, or whatever his name is, the Uzbekistani fighter at 122. Of course, a certain amount of people are calling for that fight. I personally think that he had his opportunity against Marlon Tapales. Now, that fight would still be a very good fight, but personally, the fight that I want to see Inoue in next in is Junto Nakatani. That's the fight that I personally want to see him in, because Junto Nakatani, he's a relatively good boxer. He's a little bit lengthier than Inoue, and it's going to be interesting. And of course, both of those fighters are probably the two best Japanese fighters in the world. So it's going to be very particularly interesting to see that fight. But once again, Inoue is going to have to be a little bit careful in some of these fights, because some of these guys, especially when he moves up, and if he fights guys like Junto Nakatani and Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, they may be able to take advantage of certain faults within a style that other guys were not. He's going to have to be very careful. He's going to have to sharpen up on that defense. I think he has the capability, and I don't think that Inoue is a bad defensive fighter, but kind of like Terrence Bud Crawford, sometimes he can get caught a little bit too high and centered. Sometimes, he can be caught getting a little bit too greedy with his punches, and sometimes keeping one hand down while he throws the other one. He's got to be very careful. He's got to be very careful. And we've seen that against Luis Neri, where not only was his hand down, but on top of that, but that wasn't really the problem against Neri. The problem against Neri is that Neri was in punching position and already in a twisting motion, and Inoue thought that his speed was so quick that he'd be able to beat Neri to the punch. And a lot of the times he might be able to. But that was still a very crucial mistake that he shouldn't have made, and that's why he got knocked down. So Inoue, once again, is going to have to be very careful. But once again, this dude, Naoya Inoue, very special fighter, very talented, very technical, all-time great level talent, great fighter. But we're going to see overall, once again, what happens when he faces guys like Junto Nakatani and Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez. I would probably favor him in both of those fights, but it's going to be very particularly interesting. Going to be very interesting. But anyways, that's pretty much all I got to say for now. Great performance by Inoue to a degree. He did get hit a couple times. But Inoue, once again, the only thing that I would state is that he's going to have to be a little bit more careful and make sure, not to fight so tall, sometimes with his chin up in the air. And just, just sharpen up that defense a little bit. When you throw hooks, get your head out of range. Don't always lead with hooks. Set them up with feints and set them up with a lead hand. And on top of that, when you're throwing a hook or when you're throwing a certain punch, keep the other hand up near your face so you have that block, So just make sure of that. But anyways, other than that, I thought it was a very good performance by Inoue. Hopefully, and apparently Inoue will be fighting in Las Vegas for his next fight in the spring of 2025. I really hope it's against Junto Nakatani, but you never know. We'll see what happens. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. And of course, people also are talking about the Uzbekistani fighter fighting Inoue. That'd be a very decent fight as well. I just don't know if Inoue would really get A grade level credit for it. But we'll see. But that dude overall can box, and that's also the guy that Tapales beat to become a 2-belt holder, who was actually a relatively championship level guy, the Uzbekistani fighter. Marlon Tapales beat him, and then he went in against Inoue. So that's why I give Inoue the A- win over Marlon Tapales, in my view. That's why. Because I find Marlon Tapales, for example, to be better than what a Julius Ndongo was, who, to be quite honest with you, kind of got his belts over two bums. An older Ricky Burns that really didn't belong in the elite picture anymore, and over an Edward Troyanowski that really was never really a great fighter and really someone that was super one-dimensional. It is what it is. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting to see where Inoue goes from here. But that's about it for now. Peace out.